a new administration with regard to the MEK listing, with regard to Camp Ashraf, and with regard to this lack of clarity and lack of purpose in terms of achieving what are very basic objectives here. After we finally got access in an evidentiary fashion exactly what had happened, and we felt we had at that point proved to indict a number of people under our extraterritorial anti-terrorism laws for the murder of 19 Americans. So anyway, they called a meeting in the White House as a result of this information. And the usual senior people were invited to the meeting. It was in the room in the White House where I think everybody on my left here has been on a number of occasions. The Attorney General and I thought the purpose of the meeting was to discuss what the result would be of this information and what would happen. So at the meeting, the National Security Advisor handed out 2 documents. And when we got them, we were a little bit surprised to read them. They were 2 press statements. One was for the Republicans on the Hill, and the other one was for the reporters. And I had I asked the question. I said, I thought we were here to talk about this evidence and what we're going to do. And they said, yes, we're going to get to that. But first we have to talk about how we respond to the issue of whether or not the Iranian government was involved in this attack. Well, I said, you can delete the whether from this draft because we have substantial evidence that they were involved in the attack. And then somebody said to me, who was a lawyer, well, that's all hearsay. Which was a very surprising question to hear from the National Security Advisor. And I said, actually, it's a statement in furtherance of a conspiracy by a co-conspirator, and that's an exception to the hearsay rule. But I think, from my perspective, we reached the result that we intended to reach with respect to Khobar Towers. We indicted 14 people on 46 counts for the murder of those Americans. We have sanctions that I think are working better. I spend a lot of time in Europe working for corporations. I see within some of those corporations very resolute attempts to make sure that those sanctions are not violated because of the economic and political consequences that they would have for that company and that country. The amazing heroics that everybody witnessed after the 2009 elections on the streets of Tehran. It was almost a critical mass. It was almost exactly where it should have ended. It didn't dissipate. Those young men and women, those heroes, that's not been erased. That's not been compromised. It's there. It's powerful. All of the sanctions, all of the work that is done covertly and overtly through diplomatic channels, through military channels, through intelligence, law enforcement channels. And the objective here is to support the strongest combination and the strongest thrust point for what we want to achieve. And that is going to be on the streets and homes and colleges in that huge and great country. And it's going to probably happen, I would predict, within the near term. I don't think you can keep that kind of force under wraps and restrained with the longevity and the sustainability that the regime would certainly like. So your work here and the seminar is very, very timely. I think you add very powerful elements to this comprehensive and irreversible movement and force which the policymakers will have to respond to. They've already responded to it, but your sustaining this issue and your dedication to this issue will take it for those next few steps, next few critical steps, and how those are executed and balanced are obviously critical with respect to the preservation of life, but as importantly, the preservation of freedom and the establishment of freedom in an institutional way. So I want to thank you and commend you for your work. I think you've heard a good cross-section of theories, but also of solutions and alternatives. And my hope is that all those together will win the day and get the result that we want. Thank you.